The Sun Devils are 5-1, just like we all predicted, and the biggest reason why is because Kenny Dillingham is Himothy.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your shows. Stay in touch by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Excuse me for that throat clear. Hopefully we'll be good. Allergies are killing me lately. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And we have a lot to talk about today. The Sun Devils, I don't know if you know this, are 5-1. They are this close to being ranked. They are inside the quote-unquote top 30 for both the coaches poll and the AP poll, meaning they're just outside of that top 25 range. I have a feeling if they beat Cincinnati this upcoming weekend, and we will preview that later on this week. So again, if you're not subscribed, make sure you hit subscribe. Now's never been a better time. I have a feeling if the Sun Devils beat Cincinnati and get to 6-1, I don't know how you don't rank them. But before we get that far, let's talk about that win over Utah. The win that not a lot of people saw coming. I think that's totally fair to assume. Your host, Richie Bradshaw, did not take ASU in this game. It was the first time this season that I did not take ASU to win this game. I took them to lose the game by 2 points. I said 23-21. I thought this was going to be a low-scoring, very tight game. Lo and behold, it was a very tight game. ASU wins 27-19. But, man, it felt like they were in control of this game for the most part. And the thing that impressed me the most was the grit and the determination to be able to fight the odds and get this win. It was a very, very impressive win. One that I hope that the team is proud of, that the coaching staff is proud of, that the alumni, the students, and the fans are all proud of. Today, we're going to talk about the good, the bad, takeaways, and we're going to hand out some game balls. We've already talked about a little bit of the good, so let's keep going into detail with that. We got to talk about Cam Skattebo, man. Come on. You know you can't talk about Arizona State Sun Devils football without mentioning Cam Skattebo, the people's running back, as we like to call him on the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. Mr. Skattebo once again dominated this game, 158 yards on 22 carries, 7.2 yards a pop. He had a 50-yard touchdown run in this game. He also had a 47-touchdown run in this game. 2 scores on the ground. He also caught 4 passes for 41 yards, including a ridiculous over-the-shoulder reception to convert a crucial third down for the Sun Devils. That ended up helping them get to a point where they were able to take a lot more time off the clock right before the Utes got the football for the last time, and a certain linebacker stepped up. And don't worry, we're going to talk about him a lot in this podcast. But Skattebo is ridiculous. We all know this. There's a reason why he is such a fan favorite here on the show and in the Valley. The people's running back can run it. He can catch it. Last year, when he was throwing it, he was good. When he was punting it, he was good. And of course, he's just your favorite running back. He's the people's running back, and he's really, really good. And now is the time to get aboard that hype train because, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that Cam Skattebo is a sleeper for the Doak Walker Award, which is handed out to the nation's top running back. Unfortunately, he is going up against Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, who is the runaway favorite for that award, no pun intended, and also one of the heavyweights to win the Heisman Trophy this year. He's playing at this is going to sound crazy, but when you look at it, he's playing at a Barry Sanders level right now. It's historically dominant. And unfortunately, it's going to really take away everybody else's chances from being a candidate to win the Doak Walker Award. But nonetheless, Cam Skattebo is a top 3 candidate. By the end of the year, he should be no worse than number 2. The question is, how distant is that difference going to be? More than likely, it's going to be pretty big. He's putting together a legitimate Doak Walker Award candidacy this year. He just unfortunately is going up against Ashton Jeanty. My question for you guys, and I would love you to leave a comment and let me know what you think, is Cameron Skattebo trending towards all-time status for the Sun Devils? He is on pace for the 2nd most rushing yards in a single season for the Sun Devils. They are 1 game away from being bowl eligible, which would get them a 13th game, and he would have a legitimate chance, based off of the way he's playing this year, to break Eno Benjamin's single-season rushing yards record. He's been incredible. He has scored in every single game this year, except Mississippi State, and he ran for 262 yards in that game. What were the odds that that was the one game you weren't going to score in? He probably could have. He decided to go down to help the Sun Devils bleed the clock out instead of get into the end zone on one of the final carries of the game. Now that I look at it, it's like, you should have scored just for the fact that you've scored in every other game, but that's okay. He's still averaging over a touchdown a game right now. Skattebo's insane. Is he trending towards all-time status? Let me know in the comments. The offensive line. I want to ask you another question, and I am asking myself this question as well. Was Richie Bradshaw of Locked On Sun Devils too harsh on the offensive line? I had very high standards and expectations going into this season. I have said throughout the year, I feel like they have been underwhelming. And then I watched them against Utah, one of the best defenses in the Big 12. And for the most part, they controlled the line of scrimmage. You don't help Skattebo run for 7.2 yards per carry by accident in these kind of performances. The Sun Devils as a whole had 176 yards on 37 carries. And if I were to do that math right now, that is 4.8 yards per carry. Keep in mind, there were also some big kneel downs. ASU had 4 kneel downs for negative 29 yards. That's nuts. Levitt was also sacked one time in this game. I know that kind of hurt the rushing average as well. They dominated. They also helped Sam Levitt to stay up and confident in the pocket. He goes 11 of 18, 154 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But he was able to spread the ball around pretty well. The Jordan Tyson to Levitt connection is officially becoming a thing. 5 catches, 84 yards, and 1 touchdown for ASU's number 1 receiver. They have finally figured it out. Levitt continues to look better with each passing week. Is he perfect? No, not at all. Long ways to go for him. But the offensive line did a really good job creating a clean pocket for him, and they did an even better job dominating the line of scrimmage for the running game to flourish the way that it did. Very impressive performance from the offensive line. Let's flip over to the defense. We got to talk about Caleb McCullough. Caleb McCullough. I don't know how many fans knew about him going into this game. He has been someone that has been with the program for, I think, 5 years. I'm pretty sure he got that year of eligibility from the COVID season. And he has stuck around through the highs and the bottom of the ocean lows. Back-to-back 3-win season. We talked to Kenny Dillingham in the post-game conference about Caleb McCullough, and he told us flat out, he was like, look, that was a guy that I fought for. That was a guy that I really did not want to leave the program. And since I got there, and after last season, he was someone that I told him, I was like, we would all understand if you wanted to chase other opportunities at schools that present you a better opportunity to start, a better opportunity to win. But we want you here. And Caleb said, okay, bet. I want to be here too. And McCullough has put up really some really underrated numbers over the past, I guess, 2 seasons for ASU. Last year, he had 52 tackles in a part-time role, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble. He split it evenly, 26 solo, 26 assisted. He was a good player last year. He was top 5 on the team in tackles. This year, he has 31 tackles, 15 solo, 16 assists. He has 2 interceptions, ladies and gentlemen. Those 2 interceptions came in this game, including the game-sealing interception off of Cam Rising. It was a storybook game for Caleb McCullough, a guy who has bided his time at Arizona State, someone who has not been given any handouts for opportunities to get onto the field. Keyshawn Elliott had a really crappy, not roughing the passer, targeting call 2 weeks ago against Kansas in the second half, so he had to sit out the first half of this game. They called up Caleb McCullough. They said, hey, man, you're the guy. You are going to be leading this defense in the place of Keyshawn Elliott. And he dominated the first half so much that they were like, yeah, we can't take him off the field. He ends up leading the team in tackles with 12 total tackles. That's 3 more than the next guy. 6 solo, 6 assisted, 1.5 TFLs, and of course the 2 aforementioned interceptions. Ladies and gentlemen, Caleb McCullough deserves all of the fan love in the world as somebody who has stuck with the program through thick and thin. You got to give him some love. You have to give him his flowers. I encourage you to just love on this guy. I would say that he should be a fan favorite at this point. And I really hope that you guys are able to step onto that bandwagon as well, because this young man has proven that adversity is going to challenge you, but when you come through it and you get your time to shine, you step up, everyone's going to love you. Last one I want to talk about. We talked about him at the top of the show. Kenny Dillingham. He is Himothy. He is Himothy Chalamet. He is Himmy Turner. He is any other one of those play on words, whatever you want to call it. This was a masterful game from Kenny Dillingham. This is one of the best coaching performances that he has put together on the offensive side and the defensive side of the football. ASU was flourishing in this game. They did a lot of things right on offense. They did a lot of things right on defense. They, at the end of the day, this was a great performance from the Sun Devils. There were flaws, obviously. We're going to talk about those coming up next, but this was a really good game for Kenny Dillingham. This is a really, really good game for Kenny Dillingham. This was one of the best coached games for a Sun Devils head coach that we've had in the last several years. This was also a game that should get everybody on board the Kenny Dillingham hype train. Ladies and gentlemen, this valley is activated. This team is bought into the culture that Kenny Dillingham is throwing down. It is, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to say that it's easy to kind of buy in. It's not intoxicating. It's right on the tip of my tongue. We'll get there. But this is such an easy team to believe in right now. This is a Sun Devils team that has come so far in such a short amount of time. I want to give a shout out to, and now I can't remember the guy who asked the question, Doug Franz? I think it was Doug Franz, I'm not sure, who asked him a question in the press conference that I actually really loved. It started off shaky because I wasn't sure where he was going. And he said, you can be as humble and modest as you want. This is the question. You can be as humble and modest as you want, but these rebuilds typically take about 3 years. You turn it around in a year and a half. How do you feel? And you sat there and you were like, I mean, come on, Kenny, you got to take your flowers at that point. And Kenny's still humble. And he's like, at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about these players. It's about the athletes and everybody who has bought into the culture. And I'm just happy to be at the forefront of it. Kenny, come on, man. Just take the compliment. I know he did, but he deserves so much credit for the direction that the Sun Devils are in right now. Guys, that was a lot of good that we had to talk about just now. We are already 15 minutes into the show, and we've had nothing but good to talk about. There is some bad that we got to talk about too, and what ASU needs to work on moving forward to make sure that they don't start stumbling that they can get to bowl eligibility and maybe continue competing in the Big 12. That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Sun Devil fans, college football fans, anybody out there, it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we have pooled over $10,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to a massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to that specific player that you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you receive yourself exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athletes and the transfers don't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, I'm supporting Caleb McCullough. I am pitching my money over to him, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 is going to make a difference. Let's show Caleb McCullough the love and keep him connected to our school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets the team up for success. Don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter referral code LOCKEDON, and you're entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign will also get you entered automatically. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Download Roy today. Join the NIL game with no subscriptions, no feeds, and be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy, ROY_. Return on you for more info. Roy, supporting the players, change the game. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, subscribe, turn on those notifications so you get that update whenever we post new content. Special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Let's go ahead and get back into our conversation. Like I said, it wasn't all rainbows and butterflies in this game, but guess what? There was a lot of good to take away from it. There was still some bad to take away. I've got 4 points here that I am curious how we move forward. We'll start with the one that I think is obscure in the sense of, like, I don't really know how ASU fixes it, and that's how can you avoid bad penalties? When I say bad penalties, I mean when the refs are hosing you with terrible targeting calls. Over the last 2 weeks, ASU has been flamed with 3 targeting calls that knocked out Keyshawn Elliott and Clayton Smith in the first half of the Utah game because they were called against Kansas. I thought both of them were terrible. I thought the one on Clayton Smith was one of the worst calls that I have ever seen from an officiating crew in my life. In the press box, I was muttering under my breath how angry I was. And then last week, in the second half, when Clayton Smith returns, within the first 5 snaps, they threw a targeting call on him, and we're thinking that that's absolutely ridiculous. The good news is so did New York. And they were like, oh, yeah, we're going to pick that flag up. That is not targeting. And they kept him in. There's just been some bad calls this year. And to a point where I don't think it's necessarily an ASU problem. But how do you clean that up so that you can get yourselves out of scenarios and situations where you are put on the stand by the officiating? It's really frustrating for these players, for the coaches, and obviously the fans. We don't want to see these crappy penalties that are thrown on the team. And again, a lot of it's not really in your control. These Big 12 officials, I feel like we still got Pac-12 officials sometimes. We'll wait and see. My 3 questions, and I do want to see cleaned up. Not really questions, I suppose. Number 1, we got to see the run defense start to get itself figured out. The last 3 weeks, ASU has gone up against some pretty good running backs. This past weekend, they went up against Micah Bernard. He was a beast. He was a monster. My question was, why didn't he get the ball more in this game? They really forced the issue on Cam Rising to throw the ball. He was 37 passing attempts with 16 completions. That's well under 50%. Micah Bernard, 21 carries, 129 yards. Like, why are you not funding this? I don't understand. It truly was mind-boggling to me. The week before, they faced Devin Neal, another really good running back, 14 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown. And the week before that, well, I guess 2 weeks before that, because you went into your bye week, you had to go against Taj Brooks, who is arguably the best running back in the Big 12, 27 carries, 117 yards. You are going up against some elite running backs. I totally understand that. But ASU has got to figure out how to do a better job of taking these guys out of the game. It's not easy. It's anything but. These are great running backs. All three of them have NFL futures potentially. We'll wait and see. They got to figure it out, though. Second thing that I'm curious about, there's a lot of big plays on defense, man. You've got to find a way to clean those up as well. It was something that kept Utah in the game. I mean, you only beat Utah by 8 points. It felt like you beat them by more, admittedly. But there was a lot of opportunities that were given up to the Utes. 5 players caught a pass for the Utes. Each of them had a catch for at least 10 yards. They were all able to get big chunk plays. Dorian Singer, 4 catches, 75 yards, including a 35-yard long. Brant Keefe, 3 catches, 24 yards, including a 23-yard long. Micah Bernard, the running back, 5 catches, 61 yards, including a 19-yard long. They were getting it done through the air. They were getting some chunk plays on the ground that we already mentioned from Micah Bernard. ASU just, they can't afford to continue giving up the big plays because it's happened almost the whole season. It really felt like it started against Texas State when they just exposed ASU in the first half. And there was some big plays against Mississippi State as well. I know they had that screen over the middle that went for like a 50, 60, 70-yard touchdown, something like that. I don't remember. That was a minute ago. They have been beat up by Texas Tech. They've been beat up by Kansas against a Jalen Daniels quarterback who was not good this year, and yet he looked great against ASU. And then this past weekend, they were just finding big plays. The Utes were. You got to get that to stop. You're only facing better competition down the road here. It's the big stretch. You've still got Oklahoma State and Ollie Gordon who could blow up at any time. You've got Kansas State in Manhattan. Avery Johnson can blow up at any time. You've got Arizona. They're not good, but they still have Tetairoa McMillan, who owned you last year. You can't afford to let them do that again. They have got to clean up those big plays, or they're just going to make things more difficult on themselves. Last thing I want to point out, the special teams. Special teams not good right now, man. They end up missing an extra point early in the game by Carson Kiefer. I don't know how much we're going to see of him from the rest of the year. That was a huge missed PAT. You only beat Utah by 8 points. You kick that PAT, you have a 9-point lead. That's 2 possessions. You are not sweating out the last few minutes of the game the way that you were without that missed PAT. That just can't happen, man. You've got to get that cleaned up. It was a good game for Ian Hershey. He knocked through all 3 of his extra points, but field goals have been a problem for this team this year as well. Punting. Kenyon Floyd, he's a beast. He was like a 5-star special teams recruit. He was a 2-star. He might have been a 3-star overall recruit coming out of the Valley. And he punted it 3 times for 106 yards, along with 38. That's not going to get it done. They have got to improve in their special teams game. It's just flat out, you're missing opportunities. You can't miss chip shot field goals. You can't miss PATs, man. That's the bottom line. You're just absolutely killing yourselves as you continue to repeat the same mistakes week to week to week to week to week. ASU has not been a great, a great special teams unit this year. They are just 7 of 11 on field goals. They have missed 2 PATs. You got to fix it. You have got to fix it. Let's go ahead and hop into some takeaways now from the game. I've got 3 big takeaways, and I got 4 game balls to hand out, ladies and gentlemen. That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Today's episode is sponsored to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, college football fans, hockey fans, NBA fans, whoever you are. You can start this upcoming season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, when you get the hunch in the middle of the game that you just know there's something there for you. My NFL fans, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. That way you know exactly what you're feeling good about. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet, whether that's a money line, whether that is an over-under, a prop bet, or whatever you're feeling good about. That's FanDuel.com to go ahead and get started with America's #1 sportsbook. One last time, wherever you're getting your shows, like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get that update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. I got 3 takeaways. I got 4 game balls to hand out. First takeaway, this offense, they are nearing completion. What I mean by that, the run game is figured out. There's no questions about that. Cam Skattebo is great. Now, I still want to see other guys involved. I want to see more into Carlos Brooks. I want to see more Raleek Brown, who has been banged up this year, so hard to get on the field. But Cam Skattebo is great, and Sam Levitt is a dual threat. ASU has one of the best rushing attacks in the Big 12. I would be curious to see where they rank across the nation. Run game is figured out. In the passing game, it's up and down. It kind of is what it is, but you have the Levitt to Tyson connection that has been established over the last few games. Those two have finally been able to get on the same page, and you are seeing ASU just totally take advantage of such a good connection. Over the last 4 games, starting at Texas State, 6 catches, 120 yards, 1 touchdown. Against Texas Tech, 2 catches, 33 yards. It was not the best day for either of them. 2 weeks ago against Kansas, 6 catches, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns, and against Utah this past weekend, 5 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. The two are averaging 14.8 yards per completion. They are on the same page. With you having your #1 receiver firmly established, that's great news for the offense. The offensive line playing really good football. Like I said at the top of the show, I'm curious if I've just been flat out too harsh on the offensive line. And I want to give myself a clean slate and go into it completely not blind, but just a new slate, a fresh perspective is what I should say for looking at this offensive line. They deserve it. They have absolutely earned it. I want to give them more credit than what I have been. Offense looks great. They are nearing completion. The moment that Sam Levitt is really able to take that step forward, there's not going to be a lot of teams that can stop what this offense is doing right now. Second takeaway, this defense has a backbone. Yeah, they're giving up a lot of big plays. Yeah, this is not a flawless unit. They're getting bullied by really good running backs right now. They have been, like I said, giving up some big plays. But at the end of the day, they bite down when they need to. They were able to force some, some turnover on downs. They created 3 interceptions in this game. Keep in mind, they hadn't had an interception since Texas State. And then they pulled down 3 of them in this game. They are able to generate pressure against a good Utah offensive line. They were able to get Cam Rising down twice in this game, including a clutch sack towards the end of the game with Zach Swanson and Jeff Clark coming up together. The defense is stepping up. When they need them most, the defense makes adjustments. We've talked all year long on the show about how Brian Ward is a master defensive coordinator and that he is able to make adjustments that really just keep ASU in these football games. Defense is great. They have a backbone. When push comes to shove them, when their backs are up against the wall, they figure it out. Last takeaway, Kenny Dillingham is him. We talked about that earlier, so I'm not going to take too much more time into this, but buy in. Literally buy in, figuratively buy in, metaphorically, whatever. Buy into Kenny Dillingham. This is him. This is the guy who is turning around the program, and he's doing it at a remarkable rate. Like Doug Franz had asked, it's a 3-year process to take a program that is as low as ASU was and rebuild them back up to the status of competitors or even just okay. ASU was 5-1 with big wins this year. They took down an SEC team early in the year. They got a comeback win against Texas State, which is a pretty quality team in the Sun Belt. They beat Kansas. They beat Utah, 2 of the teams that were picked to finish top 3 in the Big 12. They are doing great things this year, things that we weren't expecting. They're 5-1. I had the Sun Devils 3-3 at this point in time, including an 0-3 start to conference play. I had the Sun Devils finishing 7-5 on the year. There's a chance that they get to 7 wins before the last 3 games of the year. Up next are Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, UCF. You're at Cincy, you're at OK State, you're hosting UCF. There's a real chance they win all 3 of those games. Oklahoma State is not good right now. Cincinnati is quality. I still take ASU. UCF, they've fallen off a cliff. ASU could be 8-1 by the time that they go into the final 3 games of the year, which are pretty difficult. It's because of Kenny Dillingham. The culture he's established, the way that the players are buying in. They're a talented group, but they are playing well above the expectations that were given to them at the beginning of the season. The fans, they're bought in. I encourage you to continue to get invested in this team because the good times are only going to get better. Let's wrap it up with game balls. This is a little bit of a longer podcast. That's okay. We've had a lot to talk about today. Game balls. Number 1, of course, it's Cam Skattebo. How can it not be Cam Skattebo? This dude is just insane. He's the people's running back, ladies and gentlemen. He was an elite runner in this game. He had two touchdowns, 50 yards, 47 yards. It doesn't get better than that. He averaged 7.2 yards on the ground, period, in this game. He caught the ball. When you needed a big play, you turn to Skattebo. And Skattebo has said all year, I want to be that guy. Kenny Dillingham in the offseason challenged me to be that guy. Looks like he's that guy. As another game ball for him, I feel like he's had a game ball in almost every game this year. We'd have to go back and check. Next game ball, this goes through the entirety of the offensive line. For the 100th time on this show, I think I have been too harsh on them. Like I said, leave a comment if you would agree that I've been too harsh on them. They played great in this game. They dominated the line of scrimmage. They did a really good job against a tough Utah defensive front. They ran the ball at will. Sam Levitt was only sacked once against a defense that I anticipated was going to get him down 3, 4, 5, 6 times. They did great in this game. The whole unit, even beyond the starting 5, because ASU did rotate some guys in this game. They all deserve some big-time recognition. Third game ball, Caleb McCullough, of course. Caleb McCullough was arguably the most important player in this game for the Sun Devils because with missing Keyshawn Elliott, who is one of the 3 best defensive players on this team, Caleb McCullough stepped up and he was big time. 12 tackles in this game, 2 interceptions, a tackle and a half for loss. He was near perfect in this game. And he's a great story, and he's someone that you need to buy into. I encourage you to become big-time fans of Caleb McCullough, number 22 at the linebacker spot. And don't worry, this will not be the last that you see of him. ASU has great depth at linebacker. Tate Romney is back healthy. Cyrus Fiaseu is really good. Jordan Crook's 100%, or at least close to it. You're going to see a lot of Caleb McCullough. Do not be surprised if for the second straight year, McCullough is top 5 in tackles for this team. Last game ball, Kenny Dillingham. He's just so good, man. The direction that Sun Devils football is going right now, I have compared it to some of my family and some of my friends when I have talked to them outside of the podcast. This feels like you're getting closer to the height of the Todd Graham days. And people have forgotten how good ASU football was in the height of the Todd Graham era. Back-to-back 10-win seasons, that could be right around the corner for ASU. Heck, they can get it this year. Let's look at the schedule. I mean, the only losses that I think are super, super likely here at K-State and hosting BYU. 2 of the teams that are atop the conference. Other than that, you should beat Cincinnati. With the way Oklahoma State is playing, you should beat them, even in Stillwater. You should dominate UCF, and I promise you, they're going to beat Arizona this year. That's a guarantee. 9-3 feels pretty realistic. 7-5, my prediction, that feels like a worst-case scenario at this point. Maybe they're 10 wins. I don't know. They're right there. Kenny Dillingham's got them going places right now. You need to be invested. That's my game balls, ladies and gentlemen. Those are my takeaways. That's the good and that is the bad from this game. Great win for the Sun Devils. They are 5-1. If you want to see my completely raw, unscripted reaction to this win, go back. This is the previous podcast. It's 20 minutes of me just rambling. It was like 1:30 in the morning. I was tired. It was a good time. Check out that podcast if you want to know how I felt about that game hours after it ended. This is the takeaways from the game. Tomorrow, we are going to be grading this team scale of 0 to 100, grading each positional group, each unit on the team, including the coaching staff, and figuring out how this team ended up playing. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in and making Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. If you want to stay in touch with that content that's coming up, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get that update whenever we post new content. I appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. Like I said, best fans in the world are the Locked On Sun Devils loyal. We will be back tomorrow to grade this team. I'll see you then. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.